So today's topic is we are going to look at um, what's delegate functions. What are delegate functions? How to deal with it. Then we're going to look at some functions which are filter, how to filter records, how to search records, how to do lookups, and some other functions. And also, what is the difference between delegation and non-delegation? Okay. So what does delegation means? So whenever you're using, so let me open up an app. We have used app a lot, and we have been seeing this same app over and over again. What we have not seen is we have not used any of the functions to filter the records or to sort the records or to search the records, right? Now, once you start doing all those data manipulations or data transformations, think in that way that you have millions of records. Now, what happens is your Canvas app is running in a sandbox. It's running and then it wants to show the data. Now, if you have millions of records, and if Canvas app wants to download that million records on a client instance, it's going to crash. There would be not enough memory. So to maintain that memory balance, they had to come up with certain functions. So some functions allow you to have delegated functions. So what delegation means is it. So if you're writing a SQL command and SQL is returning you say million rows, uh, you see when you run the query, you see not you don't see all the million rows. When you do a select query, you don't see all the million rows at once. You see first 500 rows populated, then next 500 rows populated, and the query is still running, and the next 500 rows gets populated, right? You have seen that, correct? That's some, on some level it is also delegated. So similar function, a similar concept is used here in Canvas app as well. So when you do a query, some of the functions use delegation. So what it does is it doesn't pull all the million data. It tells the data source to do that job for themselves. So it says, okay, I want a contact with first name Danish. So what it will say, Canvas app will say, okay, data source, I'm not going to pull all the million rows. You do that for me and then give me the result back. Right? So that's how delegation works. So Canvas app is not retrieving all the data. It just gets the filtered data set in the local machine. But the thing is, not all functions are delegated. So some of the functions are called non-delegated functions. And the non-delegated functions, again, with the non-delegated functions, what it means is they're not going to filter the data for you, which means they're going to pull all the data, all the million data, right? But if they filter all the million data, the app is going to crash. So for that, what Microsoft did is they defaulted it to 500 rows, top 500 rows. So that setting is configurable. So this is where you can set. So if any function is non-delegated function, so by default, they will only look for first 500 comparison. Okay, you can increase this to 2000. You cannot go beyond 2000. If you go beyond 2000, you'll get an error. Say, okay, the value needs to be between 1 and 2000. Now, if you go to 2000, and if you really have more than 2000 records in your database, then your app will be slow in performance if you're using more delegated functions. And sometimes it seems like the app might even crash if there is not enough memory, because it's all storing locally, right? It's a web browser, so it has to store in the local cache. So if there is not enough memory, it's going to crash or it's going to be slow. So to make sure, my recommendation is to maximum to go to 1000. I've made two mistakes of putting 2000 and the app never even loads the data. It takes forever. But just by reducing it to 1000, app works fantastic, like without any issues. But again, because it's a smaller data set, then it's not doing the real search on the entire data set. So now you have to be very cautious of how you are using delegated and non-delegated functions. So
Then
that's
if you,
mhm.
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, finish it. I'll ask.
No. So I was just completing my sentence, and that's
Yeah.
why that's the most trickiest part of Power Apps.
So this functionality now does so this Canvas app can it be loaded in like any tablet, any mobile device?
Yes.
So the performance also depends on what kind of device, right? So Android, Apple, Windows, everything is there, and it could be the least from the highest performing processing systems and all.
Well, so if it is Android or Apple, you're not building an app, right? You're not actually building an app for Apple. What Microsoft has done is Microsoft has created an app in App Store. It's called Power Apps. So if you go to Apple Store, uh, Apple's App Store, or Android's Google Play, search for Power Apps, and then you will get an app, right? And then the Canvas app that you're creating is loaded in that app. So it is
Or
all.
you connect
That's
from.
how. Yeah. So that's how Microsoft is managing that capabilities. Microsoft is optimizing it for that specific device.
Okay, okay.
That's why Canvas apps are running in sandbox. Canvas app always runs in the sandbox. So Power App, like what they have created is they have created everything around Power App. So even if like this is this app, okay, this is a Canvas app, right? If I run this, this is loading under a sandbox instance. See how it runs on powerapps.com. Oh, why is it asking for AccuWeather? Why is it asking for AccuWeather? I'm not even signed in to AccuWeather.
No, yeah, it pulls from memory when you have multiple organizations with you're adding new
Yeah,
tab
yeah.
ins.
Yeah. Anyway, so I cannot run that. At least I was able to edit it. So, so that did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it may be any device, but then all you're going to do is download a Power Apps app, and then in that you're going to sign in with your credentials of whichever plat organization you want to connect.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and then delegation and non-delegation is the most complex piece of Canvas apps, I would say. And then if you don't understand this properly, then you might run into a lot of issues. You know, we I've been through this, so that's what I'm saying. Um, and mostly when you're dealing with, and no organization would have less than 500 records. I mean, I've not seen any organization have less than 500 records, right?
yeah, yeah.
So this concept is applicable to all the organizations, all the projects, no matter how small they are. So there are some functions. So first of all, what are so we saw what is delegation and non-delegation. Now there are some data sources that are delegated. So common data service, which we call the acronym is CDS, SharePoint and SQL Server connectors have delegated data sources. Okay, which means any so when you add a data source, not all data source have delegated functions. So SharePoint or a SQL Server or CDS, only these connectors have delegated functions built into them. If you add any other data source, then they don't have delegated functions built into them because their custom connectors are built in such a way that they cannot handle this kind of complexity. But if you're dealing with SQL Server, SharePoint, or CDS connector, then then you do get this functionality. Now there are some functions that are delegable and some functions which are not delegable. So functions like filter, search or lookup are delegable. So we're going to use one of that function. So what we are going to do is in the same app, we're going to add a text box. Okay, and so default search and okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to search something over here. Once I press enter on change. Okay, so when I do on change, it's going to filter this gallery. This gallery was supposed to have a border. I don't know why it goes away every time. Okay, so whenever I type anything in this search box, it will try to filter this gallery. Okay, so let's rename this gallery first. Okay, so we have this. Now what I'll do is on change, I'll say filter. Okay, so now what it does is it takes the source. It you have to provide the source as the as one of the parameter, right? So what I'll do is I will provide the hold on, I'm just looking for, yeah. So I'll provide the filter as contacts. And then what is my logical test? So I want my search to happen on first name or full name. Then full name. Then txt search box. Okay. So here I'm going to do a filter on contacts. Full name is, if the full name matches, then the um, the gallery would get filtered. So let's see, contact is here. Okay, it's good. I think so I should give gallery contacts. No, contacts. Yeah. Okay, so let's search Maria. It's not working. Clear button. Okay. Hold on. One second. I'm just looking at. Yeah, in. Full name. Should work. Why is it not searching? It should search instantaneously. What am I missing? Gallery has items as contacts. And this is contacts. Data source contact is right. Are there two data sources? No, there is only one data source. Why is this not working? This has worked before. Hmm. So I was doing it opposite. Yeah, I have to not put it on this change. I had to put it on the gallery itself. So gallery is having the items as filter contacts and then text search in full name. So so whenever I'm putting in, whenever I'm typing anything in the search box, that data is taken over here and then it's doing the filter based on that text box. Now here I don't have tons of data, but even if I don't have tons of data, you can see how fast it was, right? Typing it and then it just filters out instantaneously. So um so
Even if there is tons of data, it's going to search in that 500 records only, right?
no, so filter is, so if I go to filter, filter, so filter is a delegated function.
Yeah, that's what you said. Filter, lookup, and search are delegate functions.
Right. So filter, because filter is a delegated function. So what it does is it does the lookup on first 500, but then it will go and if it's not able to find anything, or if it filters out first based on the first 500, it will go and try to fetch the other one dynamically.
So you mean that it is dynamically going to filter the 1 million records then?
That because it sends the query directly to, if you're using CDS, it will send the query directly to CRM. And then CRM, what it does is it will send the data, but it doesn't send the data all at once. It will send the data in lazy loading. So it's a
But
lazy loading kind of functionality. So it will load first 500, then you scroll down, then it will load the next 500, then you scroll down, then it will load the next 500.
no. My question is, okay, if you see there are million records,
Mhm.
okay, and then you search for Danish. Danish is just in like 10 records out of the million. So would that 10 records immediately come then? So you're saying that
Yes.
10 is part of this 500?
Yes. So 10. So if I do a search on like this, right? So those 10 would come instantaneously. If you search for Danish, then those 10 records will come instantaneously. But then, how you saw that
Oh,
scroll on the top.
okay. So you're
So what
saying,
it will do, it will do a lazy loading. You will see this three or five dots scrolling on top, and it will start loading additional data.
yeah. Okay. So the query is against million records, but the
Right.
result is filtered to just first 500. And if your result is just going to be within the like 450, all 450 is going to show up immediately. Oh
Yes,
no, sorry. I mean, yeah, if your result is within 450 out of the million, that's going to show immediately.
immediately. And then it will start loading the additional ones later on. Like
Yeah.
it will take
Okay.
some time, but it will load those data.
Yeah.
But if you're using non-delegated functions, or if you're using a connector that does not support delegation, then it will only do search on the first 500. It will not go beyond 500.
I again, you're saying about the results or the total record, the searches.
Total record search.
Okay. So that is the clear difference. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you mean to
filter.
say only the first 500?
Yes. So this filter, because it is a delegated function, it only looks for first 500. But because it is running on CDS, and if it is delegated, it will do a filter on first 500 first. I means, because see how it works is the query is sent to the data source. The data source runs that query, and then what it does is it returns the data as quick as possible, because because of performance, like it wants to improve the performance of the app. It will return the data as soon as possible. So what Power Apps does is, Power Apps is, okay, what I have in local cache, I have 500 records in my local cache. Let's filter that out and then show it to the user, so at least user will see some data. Then it will wait for the results from the data source to return more data, and it will start appending that data to the result set. That's how filter works with CDS. Okay, but there are certain functions like collect, or if you're using a few other functions which we are going to cover in the next session, like in few minutes. Some of these functions, because they're non-delegated functions, then what happens is because it's not sending query to the data source, it's only looking in its local cache. So it's filtering only on the local cache, or doing that manipulation in the local cache. Okay. Now, how do you identify which ones are delegated and which ones are not? So it's pretty simple. So you search for Power Apps, right? And then you open this first link, which is a document, and it will tell you exactly which functions and um, which functions are delegated. So filter, search, and lookups are delegated. Sort and sort by columns are delegated. These are delegated. Okay, these all are partially delegated. Now, what does partial delegates means? We are going to look at that as well. And then it clearly says that non-delegable functions. So these are all non-delegable functions. So if you are saying first n, last n, it's only going to look at your data on your local cache. It's not going to even send the query to data source. So if it is not sending the query to the database, it's not knowing what, because it is only pulling first 500, right? So, and if it is not sending the query to database, it doesn't know which is the actual last record. It will tell you the last record in your data source that is stored locally. Okay. And this is a very nice article on delegations. So, but there's another caveat as well. So the other thing in this is, now this was pretty easy because we were working on a gallery. But say we have a button. So we have screen 2, we don't have a gallery. And we don't have a gallery. Let's add a new screen. Uh, Yeah, or maybe this one, right? So you have a button, and then now on the button click, you want to do some filtering, and you want to add that data in the cache. Say I want to add some. So if I select this button, then I want to add some data in my collect. Collect is nothing but a collection, like local table creation, something like that. And then I'm gonna say um, okay. So now what I will do is I will use the same filter function and then filter on contacts, right? And then same thing, but I'll just hard code it to some name, Maria Campbell. It's a nice name. So full name equal Maria Campbell. Mm, this one is still working. Mm, yeah. So if see now you see that there are two underlines, right? If you hover over this, it will say delegation warning. What it says is the highlighted part of this formula might not work correctly on larger data set. What it means is if you run this query, then the delegation will not work on the larger data set. It will only look at the first 500. It shows this warning sign here as well. So if you see this warning sign, be cautious. Okay, if you're if you know that you're only working with a data set that will not return more than 500 records, then don't worry about it. But if you really know that you're working with a larger data set, then make sure you're changing the query. So in this context is not delegated, but if you replace it with the equal to, it is delegated. So those are the functions, those are the things that you should be looking out for when you're building the app. Yes, the function is still delegated, but the way you're querying it is not. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, it's making sense. All making sense.
Yeah. So now the most important functions that we normally use in all the apps is one is called filter. The other one is sort. So sort also has two options. So sort has source and expression. So here we'll give, so this is a source, and then the expression is okay what we want to sort it based on. So say we want to sort it based on our full name. So we'll say full name, and then whether you want ascending or descending, right? So we'll say descending. So this is one way of doing it. Okay, so now everyone is now sorted descending, right? Then there's something called as sort by column. So sort by column is like, it's a very easy way of sorting it. So here you just give the source and then you just specify one single column. So you'll say full name, and then again same ascending or descending. Now what's the difference between sort and sort by column is, in sort you can specify multiple expressions of sort. So you can create multiple level of sort. So sort first by this, then by this, then by this. Whereas in sort by column, it's just by one column. So if you want to sort by two things, then you have to use sort. If you're just sorting it by one, then you use sort by column. Both are delegated, so you don't have to worry about delegations here. Um, Then the other function is called lookup. Now lookup is a very nice function. So let's say, I'm just gonna make this smaller and the label here. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I want the, so whenever I do a search, whichever the first record is shown on the list, I want that first record's full name to be displayed over here. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, yeah, let's see. So lookup, or maybe not that. So look contact, and then I want to look up my full name is equal to Maria Campbell. And then here I'm gonna show the result, like what source, what is my condition, and then what I want to send back, like what I want to show. So I want to show, say, phone number. Main phone. 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 There you go. What is this field? Business phone. That's it. Business phone. Okay. So Maria Campbell. Maria Campbell did not have a business phone. Or let's see. Oh, there's a sample as well in the name. That's why. There you go. So look up contact's full name, and then you're just providing what it should return. That's called lookup. So it's just returning returning one single records data based on the condition. Okay, so that's the difference between filter and lookup. What filter does is filter gives you the entire data set, whereas lookup gives you one single records top result. So even if there was like multiple Maria Campbell, it would only return you one data. It would only return you top record for that particular match. Okay, so that's the difference between lookup and filter. And then there's another function called a search. Now search, again, it takes contact like data source. Then here what you have to do is search only functions on the text type of attribute. So single line text, multi-line text, it will only work in on those attributes. It will also work on phone numbers. It doesn't work on lookups. It doesn't work on option sets or multi option sets, and even customer.
How do you, so how do you know that this, so is there again documentation like this will work, do on this will do, or you're telling based on your experience?
Oh no, yeah. So to identify that, I search in Power Apps. there are actually functions. I'll send you that list of functions. Yeah, there you go. All these are list of functions. All these are list of formulas. So I'll
Cool.
send you this list as well. There are like tons of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm wondering how could they differentiate between each one? This one does this, this. So they must have categorized something like, as you said, delegable, not delegable, delegatable. They must have categorized something in, okay, these category of controls will do only this, something like that.
Unfortunately, there is nothing as such. They have everything in one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you can see,
Yeah. So
these are all
it's
the formula references, and that's about it.
awesome. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
you get it based on
But
your
yeah, but then
experience.
you have all this alphabetically they are arranged, but yeah, they haven't categorized them as
So
this.
when you design this, you think like, okay, there are a lot as you see. So you think like, okay, in Excel I would be doing this. Let me see if the same is available in Power Apps. Is that how you come up with mind with the design? Like, okay, here I need to use search. Here I need to use sort.
Well,
Here
so
filter.
no, so not necessarily because whatever you can do in Excel, you can certainly do in Power Apps, but Power Apps has more additional functions like add columns. Now, what does this add columns does is you have a, so I'm going to actually show add columns. So I'll keep that for later on.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But to answer your question, there are like you'll say that the Excel is at the base. The Power Apps is much more advanced than Excel. You have like hundreds of additional functions in Power Apps.
So that is what. How do you know what to use where?
So that's all depends on like as you start using as you start creating Power Apps, you will see issues with those apps, and then try to fix those issues, right?
Yeah.
That's how you would learn, like how you would normally learn coding, right? If you're
Yeah.
writing a plugin and plugin is going in the loop, then you'll say, oh, how do I fix this? It's going in loop, how do I fix this? Then you say, oh, there's something called as depth, so let me put that condition as, okay, if it is greater than 2, then just return, don't execute anything,
No.
something like that, right?
I,
So
I I was like thinking like, okay, now if you are designing a form, right? Now the base we all think in mind is like HTML. Okay, there would be a button, there would be a text box, there would be a label. The HTML is the base. We think, okay, when it is there, there is something more will be in CRM like that, something like that. So
mhm,
so the base, I was thinking if you're using the base as Excel, okay, when something like this is in Excel, okay, something more advanced or similar should definitely be in Power Apps. That's how
right,
you think, okay, what control to use where.
yeah, 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 yes, kind
Okay.
of, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'll send you this reference as well.
Yeah.
uh, but mostly, I mean, for searching or for doing any lookups or doing any filter, you'd normally use filter, search, and lookups. Normally,
Sort.
most of the time, like 80% of the time, you would end up using filter than any other function,
Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
right? Sort is again like one of the most commonly used functions, sort and filter.
Sort search.
Yeah. Sort is for sorting, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Filter
I
is
know. I
for
know.
your advanced find is filter.
Oh, okay.
Search is where you are actually searching on, say, text. That's when you will use search.
It's
Um,
like a relevant search.
right. Yes.
So
Exact.
you also like give like what? So is that what you show? Like what fields you can search?
Yeah. So here you can give your text. So text is so let's say Maria. We are only concentrating on Maria today. And then you specify the column here, so you specify, okay, I'm gonna search this in my full name, but then you can also give additional columns. So you can give, okay, not only in full name but also in owner ID value. So here you can actually do something in owner ID value, but owner ID value sometimes it returns value, sometimes it does not. See, it gave me an error. So it's very tricky. um, but come on, but you could use any other text value. So line 1, line 2, anything. And because search is returning your table, and this is expecting, what is happening? This is expecting a text, right? So you have to do dot, but then again, dot would give you multiple things. So you have to do something called as first. So first will only return you the first data set, and then you'll say dot and then business phone.
This all looks like SSRS.
Yeah. So so search Maria on either on full name column or on address line one. Then you get the table. Then you do the first of that table and then do dot business phone. So you got this, right? Yeah, it's easy once you start using this, right? Then it becomes very easy to even remember this. You don't even have to go to the reference page anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you looked at lookup, search, filter, first, sort. There's something called as add column. Now add column is really exciting. So say you have contacts and then contact gave you all the data set, but you wanted to add additional column. In SSIS, we have that add column control flow where you can add extra column to the data source, and then you can actually write a logic or write an expression to populate the data in that column. Similar concept. Okay, let's see. So add column, and then again source. So it would be our contacts. Then it would say, okay, give me the name of the column that you want to create. So we are going to give the name of the column. So column name would be what do you want? Uh, I don't know. First name and business one. Let's create something. So first name phone. Okay, and then what would your expression be for that particular column? So it would be first name first name and business phone. And you can give column, you can add multiple columns. You can give columns, expressions, column expressions. Only gonna add one column. Now again, this returns a table, right? So what we are gonna do is, again, we are gonna do first because we are putting it in the label, right? That's why we have to do first. Otherwise, we can put it in a collection as well. So I'm gonna show a collection later on, but just for so now here we can see first name phone. There you go. Okay, so here you have that first name and then it is appended with the phone number. So I did a new column in my data source. This comes in very handy when you're building very complex apps. You would say that why would I need add column? But trust me, it really comes very handy. Think of a scenario where you have to check and uncheck, right? Now, if I added a um, if I want to add a checkbox here in the gallery control, and then once I added a checkbox in my gallery control, I want to capture that checkbox in my source. That's when this add column would come into play. So I can add that column, say checked is checked as one of the column in the source, and then uh, connect it with my checkbox. So my source is getting changed based on that condition. So which means my checkboxes are now persistent with the data source. And then I can even capture that because it is persistent in my data source. I can go and update it in CRM if I want to.
Okay.
This is so this actually is been asked to me several times. Chaitanya comes to me, Amir comes to me, and then he's oh, how can I persist the data? I did a checkbox, or I did a radio button. How would I uh, persist that checkbox or that value? This is how you persist it. You add a column to your data source as is checked or whatever column you want to name it as, and then bind it to the control that you're adding. And that's how you would persist it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, no. Nice. We covered delegates, non-delegates, functions, search,
Yeah.
sort first, add columns, lot of information.
And right now you'll be overwhelmed with all this information, but once you start
Yeah,
using it's pretty simple, right? It's just what if you
yeah,
want to filter, it's filter. If you want to sort, it's sort. You don't have to keep anything in mind other than what we normally call them as.
yeah,
Yeah. And if in doubt, always Google.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's it for today. So if there's no more questions, then I think so we can I can give you your 1 minute back.
Okay, yeah. So this week we have tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday,
Yeah, so that's what I
okay,
was
except
discussing
Friday.
with
So 4 days.
yeah, so that's what I was discussing with Srini. Because of my vacation, I had to wrap this thing up little early.
So this week is the last, right?
This week is the last, yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what we could do is uh, tomorrow's session we can skip it because I wanted to cover delegate functions and all this stuff in two different sessions, but I was able to do it in one. So we will do Wednesday, and then
Okay.
we would learn about and Wednesday would be really good because we are gonna look at uh, timers, how to use timers, and how to do animation in Power Apps.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, all nice stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay then, guys.
Cool, man.
All right,
Thank you.
Rajesh,
Thanks a
thanks.
lot.
Bye.
We'll meet on Wednesday then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.